Hi, welcome to Seaside Allotment. My name's Steve and this is a quick video on making raised beds, cold frames and hotbeds. So on my allotment all of the raised bed frames are all the same size, and that means that I can use any of the tops that I've created. So in this case I've got little polytunnels, I've got cold frame tops, and I've got a variety of netted frames, and they can all be just unscrewed and moved around to any beds to suit the conditions required at any particular time of year. And so today I'm going to talk mostly about the cold frame design, which is a quick and simple design. I'm a newbie to allotmenting, and so I just wanted something that I could try out, something that would be very flexible and easy to modify in the future. So I started off with some treated timber. I got 14 foot by 6 inch by 2 inch planks, and I chopped those into 4, and those would form the cross pieces of the frames. And then I got 16 foot planks by 6 inch by 1 inch, and I chopped those into 2, and so those would provide the side pieces. And the resulting frames are therefore 8 foot long by 3.5 foot wide. And they're really sturdy because the cross pieces are 2 inches. That makes them really sturdy. I also, in order to make the tops of the cold frames, I needed some diagonal pieces, and so I took the first set of timbers and just had those chopped in half diagonally, as you can see in that picture. So making the base is as simple as can be. The cross pieces are just screwed to the side pieces, 3 screws each, and that was a quick and easy process. I used an electric screwdriver, and the resulting frames are really very rigid. They can be easily moved around, they don't need any additional supports, they can be stacked on top of each other, and simple braces can just be attached to the inside if required for very high stacks. So this is what a cold frame looks like from the side. So we've got the raised bed base and then a cold frame top. Everything's just quickly screwed together and can be unscrewed to move around. And the cold frame top is just attached via a hinge to the back. It is sometimes useful to just add some braces, so I just have some little bits of cut off wood, and I just screw these braces to the inside of the frames so they're out of the way, and that just makes everything extra rigid. Making the lid, I just got roofing battens, and I obviously just chop those to the same lengths as you've seen previously. And then I just use angle brackets to screw everything together. There's angle brackets on the top, as you can see there. And then I also put angle brackets on the bottom, the ones shown in yellow. And I offset those so that the screws didn't collide with each other. The result is a very strong frame, and it does need to be strong because when the wind catches these lids and blows catches them and blows them, there's quite a lot of twist and strain on the frames, so it's useful to have them nice and rigid. So then I covered the whole thing with polythene on a nice hot day, and that meant that when the polythene shrinks when it gets cold, everything is really nice and taut. There's no flapping around, and I think that means that the polythene will last a lot longer. I overlapped the polythene and then stapled it on the underside. That meant that the staples are exposed to slightly less weather, but it also meant that you can pull the polythene really quite nice and taut and then staple it with a staple gun. And then I put polytunnel repair tape over all of the joints and all of the edges and over all of the brackets, just to make it extra resilient. And the repair tape was also lapped over as well. Now, venting of these cold frames is extremely important, otherwise everything gets mouldy and damp on the inside of them. So I had some of the cold frame top members going spare, so I just chopped those off at the appropriate angles, and then put little legs on them so they slipped on either side of the cold frame, and you'll see that in a photograph in a minute. And then I hold the whole thing together with these coat hooks. The chromed ones I found to be really good, very resilient to all the weather conditions, and everything was just pulled taut with bungee cords, which again is pretty important if you live in a windy location like I do. So you can make any size that you want. You can have really low cold frames like the one over on the left. You can add an extra tier for a deep frame that you perhaps want to go carrots in, or something that grows a bit taller like a cos lettuce or something like that. Or you can make a really deep structure, which I've used for hotbeds. And when you make the hotbed, I think it's a good idea to dig down the first tier, first 6 inches. And then the second tier I've effectively covered mostly by bark, which I use for all the paths on my plot, and that provides an extra layer of insulation, so you've got effectively 12 inches that are fully insulated, and then the top few tiers are exposed to the elements. Most of the bed is filled with horse manure and leaves I mixed into mine, and quite a few handfuls of chicken manure pellets, and then I topped off the first few inches with compost and soil. This size of hotbed will only probably last about 4 to 6 weeks. If you add another tier, you'll probably get 2 to 2.5 months of heat out of it, and that's what I've actually done. So this is what you end up with. So these are 2 cold frames and a hotbed. I've now added an extra tier to this hotbed at the back. You can see the support structures holding everything together with their little legs so that they don't blow off in the wind, and the bungee cords and the coat hooks to hold everything nicely together. And a bit more detail showing the bungee cords and the coat hooks. It's worth having a variety of different bungee cords around so that you can vent at lots of different angles, and that's largely dependent on the heat and the wind. I've also made these little blocks which just slip onto the side of the bed, and I use those to vent at night when it's not going to freeze or on really windy days. And then I close the beds only when it's going to freeze. So this is one of the hotbeds that I made. So we actually filled this hotbed on the 14th of January, and the resulting mix was about 10 degrees. We planted about 2 weeks later, and the bed was about 30 degrees at that time. So this was in late January, and these were seedlings that I'd raised on my grow bench in the garage under lights. And about 2 weeks after that, so this was very early March, we were started to take our first crop of this hotbed. And now 2 weeks later, so late March, and we're getting a huge abundance of lettuces. We're cropping our first radishes. Our carrots are growing nicely, as are our beetroot. So it's gone really well. So if you enjoyed this video, then please subscribe and leave some comments. They'll always be very gratefully received. I've only been growing on this allotment for a year, and so I'm very much a newbie, but I've learnt a lot, and it'd be nice to pass some of the things that I've learnt on to others. And I really like to experiment as well, and so I make mistakes, but I'm also learning very rapidly.